Welcome to MEETxEurHope final event. My name is Alexienne. I'm MEETxEurHope Executive Board member, and I was a member of MEET France and MEET UK. And I'm not going to say when I started because I would feel old. So today I have the pleasure of co-hosting this event with...
Yes, hello everyone, I'm Hendrik. I'm the head of European Affairs at MEETxEurHope. You might have heard a lot about Jeff in the last months that you experienced the project, a bit less about MEET. So you will hear more about MEET in the next hours, and I'm looking forward to this event with you. One quick housekeeping rule is that if you don't want yourself being on pictures, we invite you to sit here on the side, so the photographers will not take any pictures with the people that are here on the side. And if you want to be on pictures and you sit there on the side, we invite you, of course, to sit somewhere else, so that your beautiful faces will be on the photos as well.
Without further ado, let's open this event, and I have the pleasure of welcoming President Robke of the European Economic and Social Committee. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Alexienne. Thank you, Hendrik, Christelle, Alex, Axel, and dear colleagues and friends. First of all, I would like to welcome you here. We always say this, well, we are glad to have you here, it's a pleasure, but here it's more than this. It's really a signal that we are committed to work together. And for us, and for me personally, it was from the very beginning of my mandate, and it's now 1 year ago that I took office, it was one of my first priorities really to have a strong alliance and to join forces with young people. And therefore it's so important to have such an event here just a few weeks ahead of the European elections. We are just talking while we were waiting that everybody could enter this house, because you could feel it's still an institution, even if we make it an open house, but it's an institution, so we have some security checks. It takes a bit more time, but of course now all of you are here, and we took the time, we used the time to discuss outside a bit, and we look back what happened during the last year, because it's more or less 1 year ago when I met with you actually at my office, and we were discussing this big project, MEETxEurHope, and we were asked as European Economic and Social Committee whether we want to join this initiative. And once again, we are an institution, so I'm not a CEO who can decide only on his own, but for us it was clear from the very beginning that this is an excellent initiative. It fits absolutely in our priorities as House of Civil Society, as House of European citizens, but it fits also perfectly in my political agenda, in my manifesto, because my motto was from the very beginning, and it's still stand up for democracy, speak up for Europe, and I think this is more valid than ever ahead of the European elections. So therefore I'm really grateful that we are part of this great initiative, and I'm also grateful that we can today have this big event here in the European Economic and Social Committee, and once again I would like to welcome all of you here. As you probably know, one of my key priorities is not only to open doors of this house, but especially to open doors to young people and to boost the voice of young people here also in our house. If you look to our membership, we have a lot of experienced members, let's say it like this, but we have also more and more young members. But I think it is absolutely necessary to have the voices of youth organizations, of young people, systematically introduced and incorporated in our work and in decision-making process. And this was from the very beginning one of my objectives that I wanted to reach here together with our members, and that's the reason why we not only opened our doors, but we gave a seat to young people when we do our daily work. And our daily work is to advise European institutions. So we are not policymakers in the sense that we decide on directives or regulations, but we have a voice there. we are involved. We have the right, the mandatory right, to give our opinions to the European Commission, to the European Parliament, to organize hearings with them, to organize conferences with them. We are invited to the European Parliament when they decide to give our opinions. So it is important that this voice of civil society is loud. And therefore, I'm really glad to say that we gave you, young people, youth organizations, a seat in our negotiations. So you're not observers, you're not only guests, you are really part of our decision-making process. That was not easy, I have to say, because it's a so-called EU youth test to put all our opinions to a youth test. But I'm really grateful that we started immediately when I took office our first pilot project. And now the good news is that last month in our bureau, we decided that we will have this youth test as a permanent feature here in our house. Our youth group that we created has developed I would say, a very ambitious methodology, how to do this, how to involve youth organizations. And we had also the European Youth Forum here with us, and we decided last month in our bureau that this should be a permanent feature. I think this is a great achievement, because we know that young people's insights are a game changer, and they should be driving force for the present but also for the future of Europe. And I can say that the first experiences that we had during the pilot project were absolutely inspiring. I just talked to Christelle, and she confirmed this, that young people had made a difference and could bring in their voice. They could make written contributions, they could take the floor. So they could do everything what members can do. With one exception, they couldn't vote, because here we have the European treaties and they give the right to vote here in the House exclusively to the members. But I think it doesn't make a big difference, because in the end, most of our opinions are adopted in broad consensus. So it's more important to work before the adoption of opinions. And once again, here I'm really happy that we have you here. You can actively participate in study group meetings, you can formulate policy proposals, written contributions, and you will be also, youth representatives will be also invited to take part in follow-up and monitoring of our recommendations that we have put forward. So in short, I would say we really wanted to hear what young people had to say, and this is why the MEET initiative, the EURHOPE campaign, and all the work of Jeff and MEETxEurHope is so close to my heart and so close to the EESC. And therefore, I think it's really the perfect place to host this debate and this event here today. Christelle, Hendrik, and Axel, we have been working together early on. I said it at the beginning, and I would really like to thank you for the faith you put in this institution, for choosing us to host this event, and for the great cooperation that we had over the last year. And I'm sure this will continue also for the future. We had also Hendrik and Christelle in our March plenary here in the House when we discussed the upcoming European elections and when we discussed the demands of civil society. And we have put forward as EESC a very short resolution, not a fully fledged resolution, very short resolution, motivating citizens, also young people, really to use your right to vote. We did not write a big program for the institutions. This is something we are working on at the moment, but we will present this after the elections to the newly elected parliament, to the new commission, and I can assure you that many of your demands will be incorporated in this big resolution. But it was great to have you here and to present also the EURHOPE campaign and its impact on young people in the European elections. We had also the pleasure to have you here during our Civil Society Week in March. It was the first time ever that this House organized a fully fledged Civil Society Week, which brought together a lot of initiatives that we had before. For example, on the European Citizens Initiative, on the journalist seminar, but also on the youth parliament, I would say. We call it Your Europe, Your Say, so young people here in the House. And it was a great initiative, a great experience. And I remember that MEETxEurHope kicked off the week with a workshop on countering disinformation, democratic shield, securing the ballot. And this is another great example of the relevance of our cooperation on common areas of work and exchange of knowledge. I said it, we had also the pleasure to receive more than 100 young people during our Civil Society Week, the so-called Your Europe, Your Say event, from not only from all member states, but also from candidate countries. So it was really a wide range of young people. And it was not only a debate, but the result of this day, of this, I call it youth parliament, was concrete proposals for the next legislative term on civic engagement, on migration, on housing, on education, fight against corruption and erosion of trust in public institutions. Maybe you have seen it outside on the table. There is a folder with the key recommendations of the young people of the Europe USA event. And in particular, in the context of the European elections, we wanted to listen to young people and to provide a platform to increase youth participation at EU level. And I said it before, we are now preparing a longer resolution for the time after the elections. And I can assure you that all the demands of the young people that we collected here will be presented to the study group, and we will make sure that as many as possible of them will be integrated in our resolution. So this is another example how to work together, how to have a more inclusive house here and a more representative house with you together with young people. If we take a closer look, what we can see is that the proposals that were formulated during the EESC activities are very similar to the agenda of hope, and they revolve around topics that the EESC is strongly supporting. And I would like to give you just a few examples, because under the democracy and EU institutions dimension of the agenda of hope, one of the first ideas is to reinforce transparency and ethical conduct of elected officials. And here I can give you a good message, because we here in the House, we were one of the first institutions asking for a strong and common ethics body of all European institutions. And next week, we have the great moment, we will sign the agreement, the EESC together with all the other institutions, especially with the Commission, with the Council, with the European Parliament, to establish for the first time ever a joint ethics body, which should set up minimum standards for ethical behavior and ethical rules, and also to boost transparency. I think this is a very good news. The second idea is also something we are working on, increasing citizens' participation and their understanding of the EU. This is in your agenda, and here, once again, I can make a reference to our Civil Society Week, because for the first time ever, we had civil society panels with representatives, the whole range of civil society organizations, and we are now working also towards the use of citizens' panels here in the House. This is a bit more difficult, but we know the Commission is already using this instrument. We are in negotiations with the Commission, and I'm quite optimistic that we can also play a role here, because I'm convinced that citizens' panels and civil society, like here in the House, is the best mixture for participatory democracy, and I'm convinced that this House would be a good place to also integrate citizens' panels in our regular work. So we are still working on this, but it's on our agenda, and I think it's something we have in common. Another example, under the economy, social justice and employment dimension of the agenda of hope, one of your ideas, the first idea, is to promote easier access to employment, especially for the youth. And here I can tell you it's a long-standing demand of our House to make sure that young people have the right for fruitful participation in the labor market, and especially a participation that should take place without discrimination. So when we talk about traineeships, the ban of unpaid traineeships is of course one of our demands, but especially, or more in general, to forbid any discrimination for the reasons of age. I think this is absolutely important if we want to boost labor market participation of young people. And finally, I want to mention one point which is so important, even if in the debate of the last month the green agenda comes more and more under pressure. I still think, and I think it's more important than ever, that we together, young people, civil society, will really fight for this Green Deal and for the green transition. I think there's no alternative to make this green transition also a just transition. And here I can tell you that one of the first topics in which we have included young people since several years is exactly the climate change and environment dimension. So we regularly host youth roundtables for climate and sustainability, where young people can discuss with commissioners. They can ask questions, demands to the commissioners, and the deal is with the Commission that the commissioner have to reply in written. So they have to take all your demands seriously. Another example that we do for many years is that we send strong delegations to the COP climate conferences. And here also for many years we include in our delegations not only our members but also youth delegates. So to have a specific voice of young people at the COP conferences. And let me say another idea, the last idea that really stuck with me is the promoting innovation in European agriculture and sustainable farming. Because here also our house is organizing now for many years the Organic Awards together with the European Commission, the Committee of Regions, Copa-Cogeca and eForm Organics Europe. And these awards aim to recognize excellence throughout the organic value chain, rewarding the best and most innovative actors in EU organic production. So we are looking forward to award young people on this topic too very soon. Well, this example are just here to show you our priorities are really aligned with your agenda of hope, and that we are convinced that we should continue working together to make them a reality. Speaking of awards, today you will hold the final debate of the MEET initiative. It is another occasion to reward young, bright minds and to speak about challenges, perspectives and areas that you really care about. And these spaces for discussion are crucial for the years ahead. They give impetus to prepare for the EU and make it the place you want to live in. And I would like to mention one more point, because this is also close to my agenda. I said open the house for young people to make it more inclusive, more equal, but open this house also for our neighbors who are not yet part of our family, so the candidate countries. We are definitely advocates of enlargement, which doesn't mean that we want to water down the criteria of enlargement, not at all. But we think we cannot afford anymore to leave candidate countries alone and to leave the civil society in candidate countries alone, especially on the Western Balkans. They felt really abandoned from Europe, and we said this is not the right way. We have to engage with them now. Enlargement takes place now, integration takes place now, not in 5, 10 or 15 years when those countries, Western Balkans, but also probably Moldova or even Ukraine or Georgia will probably join. No, we have to work now with them. We have to make sure that strong structures for civil society, but also for social dialogue, for social partners, for trade unions, for the rule of law are established now. And this is the reason why we open our doors also for candidate countries. They are now part of our house, a bit similar to the youth test. They cannot vote, but we have representatives from civil society from all candidate countries who take part in our work, who have a voice in our study groups, who can make written contributions, who will come to our section and plenary meetings. So actually the work should be more or less the same of a regular EESC member. And I'm really delighted to see that we have here among the new enlargement candidate members also a gender balance and also a relevant number of young people, which was also a criteria. I think this is also important to join forces already now with youth organizations and with young people in candidate countries in order to mainstream the perspective of youth from candidate countries. Actually, in conclusion, we remain faithful to our commitment to promoting at all levels the integration of young people for a more united and stronger Europe. And allow me, when I'm finishing now, to add one more point, because we are just a few weeks ahead of the European elections, and we are here in the House are absolutely committed to support the elections, to support higher voter participation. I signed myself a memorandum of understanding with President Metsola, where we committed to joint activities, not party political activities, but activities to engage with citizens, with civil society, to motivate them to vote. And in this respect, I'm very much concerned and even shocked about recent developments, not only on disinformation, but even on violence against volunteers, against activists, against politicians. We've just seen it in the last days, especially in Germany, where even one MEP, one member of parliament, was attacked and seriously injured because he was just promoting his party and he was working on a stand, seriously injured. And I think this is absolutely a warning signal. And this is not a singular issue. It is, unfortunately, it's a consequence of a development that started years ago. More hatred, also on the internet, in social media. I think we have to discuss about rules and about enforcement of rules without the aim to restrict the freedom of expression. This is definitely not what we want. But I think freedom of expression can never justify hatred on the internet, and of course also not violence against volunteers and politicians. My motto, I said it at the beginning, of my manifesto is stand up for democracy and speak up for Europe. And I think the loudest voice of citizens is at elections. We talk about participation, we talk about demonstration, but in the end, the loudest and most important voice is during elections. And if volunteers, if activists, if politicians cannot promote their parties or their positions without fear, without being attacked, then, colleagues and friends, our democracy is really in danger. So once again, we have to condemn this. We have to look in a lot of initiatives and measures, I would say, to react to this, including maybe stricter rules and stricter law, and especially enforcement of law, because this is something which is absolutely unacceptable. And we were discussing about this also before, the fight against disinformation, against violence. I think this is something we should also, and we do it already, we should join forces, and it's one more reason that this initiative is more important than ever. So I will stop here. Once again, thank you very much for coming here. I wish you a successful day, good discussions, and I look forward not only to the debate today, but also to our cooperation in the upcoming weeks, months, and hopefully years. Thank you very much.
President, if you may stay for a while.
So yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Oliver, for these introductory words. Much appreciated. And also thank you for your support over the last months. Without further ado, I think we have a very good continuation, picking up on the points of the agenda of hope, to see what happened over the last months and what will happen next. And Christelle Saval, the President of JEF Europe, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. So you said stand up for democracy, so we're all going to stand up to speak today. Very happy to see all of you. It's really heartwarming. I had this moment when President Rupke was talking about, like, this is happening. So, yeah. We spoke about youth now. JEF has 10,000 members, many of them in the room. And we spoke about enlargement, and it's a very dear engagement that Jeff had for many years before it was trendy. And that's why we have 37 sections across Europe, so also in future member states, as we call them. We fight for federal Europe. If not already in that fight, you're welcome to join it. For European Union, that is based on the values of rule of law, of democracy, for peace. And there's much more to be done. Many activities like this one. And we speak about going to vote. We speak about demonstration. And all of this is happening on the ground. I will say a few more words about this later. But first of all, we're here together for this Meet event. So Mobilize Europe, engaging together. So this is the final debate. It's very exciting to see you have this. I look forward to hear your contribution to this one. I think what was very important with Meet, which is financed by the Commission through Serve, which is one of the events we have under the EURHope umbrella, financed by the European Parliament and others, is that we fight against this notion of one against the other, right? It's really a way to do that in an inclusive fashion and limit this trend we have all across Europe of polarization. So you had the local debates, you had the trainings, and now you're here. But before we start on this, a bit about EURHope. So how it started is, how do you feel about the future? And people have very negative feelings about the future, fear, powerlessness, anger, and that's normal. As a young person, I feel this because there's the climate crisis, there's a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, there is inflation, there was COVID. There's many reasons to be full of fear and anger and powerlessness. But there's one positive feeling, and that's hope. So that's why we chose to put hope in Europe. EURHope, so that's the campaign I'm wearing today. And that's how it started. So we teamed up with MEETxEurHope, and we started on this journey of EURHope together because we wanted to engage young people. So in the European Parliament, we launched on 9th of May 2023 the first phase of the campaign. The first phase is the consultation, and it was a huge success. And it's also showing how to engage people in different ways, because we engage people on the ground. As Jeff, we engage people online, but like this was a different way, and it's a partnership with it with many other actors across Europe. The House of Civil Society is the right way to do this final event of EURHope, because it was really a civil society effort. It gave us this agenda of hope we're going to present to you again today. So you also have to work on it this afternoon. And we wanted to do this big campaign because it was very important that we have more than Jeff, more than our volunteers. That is something that we have a broad coalition, and that there is also a basis. So that was the first phase, and then we had the phase with political parties that we're going to discuss, all the advocacy that we're doing through the agenda of hope, and then the final phase, which is hitting the ground and calling people to vote and vote for Europe of hope. So I will let Axel maybe talk a bit about the platform, and then we can go back to the next step.
We're welcoming Axel Daucher, the president, co-founder of MEETxEurHope. Axel.
Thank you, Christelle. Thank you. You were a fantastic partner during this incredible year, and thank you, Oliver, for your first day support and everyday support since that first day. So it was very, very important. So you have to listen, because you will work only this afternoon. For the moment, you listen, and I'm very happy to be with you today. In fact, when I founded MEETxEurHope 8 years ago, the situation was a bit different. We funded MEETxEurHope based on one topic, which is the double weaknesses of democracy in Europe. A democracy which is hardly impacting the reality of people, and a democracy which is hardly reconciliating people. And for that, we built MEETxEurHope, and we made a choice, which is the important thing is the exercise of power. So we put the election on the side, and we concentrate our effort into what we called participatory conduct of public policy. It was 8 years ago. 5 years ago, last election, we realized that in Europe there is a major issue about the turnout at the election. And so with Civico, we launched We Europeans, which was a huge mobilization. We contacted something like 38 million European citizens. And based on that, based on the consensus, we work with political parties. And as you maybe remember, last election, the turnout increased by 8% in Europe and 14% on young people, which makes the situation even harder this time because we are starting from a higher point and participation is really, really in danger in this coming election. But I have to say that time has changed. Since last election, now Europe is at war. Not necessarily on the field, but definitely on the information war. We are under daily attack to build delegitimacy in Europe. This informational war is even stronger with the new AI capabilities. And today, when you are looking about the extremization of the debate, about the violence in the street, the violence on the networks, of course, maybe the evolution of time, but mainly it's because it has been built. It has been built by a structured attack to the European democracy. So I think this year the election has a different stake. There is, when you are considering attack on democracy, there is two ways of doing it. Either you go and moderate people, and you tell them, oh, you will not vote. There are corruption everywhere. It means nothing, so please don't vote. Okay? Or you go on the extreme and you extremize the extremes, which is pretty easy, in fact. And that's lead to a fragmented continent, but that's lead also to maybe a feeling after the 9th of June that the election doesn't mean anything. It's a bit provocative when I say, but it can lead to that. That's why we are in a specific year. A specific year where protecting the election, engaging into the election, has an incredible importance for the survival of the democratic process in Europe. So what can we do? We can make a first thing, we can make a bet, which is the bet that we made with Jeff, which is the bet of hope. Hope like not a kind of a fallback solution. Hope like a driving force to really fight for democracy, stand for democracy, and make this election a success. And based on that, we built EURHope. And EURHope is not only the greatest citizen mobilization initiative in Europe today. It's a bet that we can have a very structured, fruitful, and positive debate on the topic we all agree, what we call consensus. And the agenda of hope is not a list of priority, it's a list of priority on which young citizens agree on. Which means that the political debate is not only why it's good and what is not good, it's how do we do it? And that's the incredible antidote to any type of informational war. When you are on a consensus debating about how you do it, you are not attackable. Information war need cleavage, need fight, need extremization. They don't know how to deal with, okay, we all agree on that, let's move on. This is the topic of EURHope. The last stake of EURHope is reconnection. Because, as you will see, we have built those consensus. We have built the consciousness of the consensus, which is as much important as the consensus. But then how can we reconnect the political words to those consensus? And this is what we will reveal in a few minutes here. So I'd like to really thank you, warmly thank you, the coalition, which has made that operation possible. EESC, as we said, very first day support as the European Parliament, but also the representation of all the members of the civil society. Civil society, we are in the house of the civil society. Civil society is a backbone of our democracy. If we build on civil society, we build for the long term. And civil society means a bunch of companies who are brave enough to join us, Accor, Caisse des Dépôts, NRW, cities, foundation, like the Bertelsmann Foundation, the Schumann Foundation, thank you, but also NGOs, organizations, OFAGE, Civico, ALDA, European Elect, ACT, Erasmus, the Good Lobby. We were 50 organizations all together. And that's why it worked. But it's a lot of work and a lot of time to gather this coalition and to make it work. So I'd like to make a special tribute to the Jeff team for the incredible work they do, and also to the MEETxEurHope team that work incredibly. Hendrik, Jules, Alexis, Lola, Manon, Jules, maybe some others, Catherine. I'm missing some. But can you imagine that to do that, there were something like 50 people working for 1 year in different ways. So it's a big organization. So the results of your hope start with a huge, huge consultation. Millions of people were proposed to join the consultation. We had 1.5 million votes, more than 5,000 proposals. It was incredible in volume and showing the potential incredible engagement of young people when you are talking about the things, not about the principle. And second things, the ideas. 5,000 ideas. And more than ideas, 15 consensus. We know the 15 things on which every young people in Europe agree on are engaged with. This matrix is a gift. It's a gift to build the Europe. It's a gift for the political parties to build how they will do those consensus. So if I'm talking to the young candidate to the election that we'll talk in a few minutes, I say today it's not only a stage for you. Today it's a chance for you to align your vision with what we have all in common, the guts we have all in common in Europe, and that for the better future. So, Christelle, you join me, I guess. You have to give more details about the agenda.
Don't go too far because then we have to buzz.
I take the buzzer.
Yeah, so maybe we can put the agenda of hope back to the screen. Yeah, so I think what was very interesting when we got all of the results, because here you see the consensus, but we also had all the proposals listed by topics. And there were 3 main topics. So there was economy and climate, which we expected, but the first one was institutions. And that's very striking because young people are not known for liking institutions or caring about institutions. But actually, that's not true, because young people understand that to change things, you have to change institutions. And I think that's one takeaway from this consultation, on top of the consensus, etc., that is very striking, and one I communicate a lot to decision makers. President Rupke spoke about the best way to engage with the civil society together with citizens. And that was something that was very important for us, because we had the 15 priorities of young people, the consensus that, more than 65% of people that voted were in favor. But we also wanted, together with civil society, explain what is the path for each of the 15 proposals. How do we make it happen? And that's how civil society also joined in the context and in the content. So we wrote 1 page on each of the 15 about next step, like what needs to change now, what needs to be better applied, what is the new regulation that needs to be done, or do we need treaty change? And we do. And that's, as a federalist, also a good takeaway from this. There's a lot of things young people want across Europe that requires treaty change. So it's something that people don't understand because treaties are complicated and the processes are complicated, but it's clear that there is a popular will to reform the EU, and that to reform the EU also in the shape of a more federal Europe. So this is our main takeaway from this. Then we asked parties to react on this. So we met with Secretary Generals of European political parties. We presented this agenda in many, many places. I was joking that I wear this shirt almost as my daily shirt. I have two, if you were wondering. And it shows that, you know, there was interest in what we had to say. And usually when you say 1.5 million votes, people start to listen to you. So that's also the takeaway of this campaign, is that there is popular support for what we have been advocating for years. So we asked the parties also to react to this 15 in writing, and that's what we're going to launch today, because it's now on the EESC platform. And also, just a few words, and maybe you can see a few pictures about what Jeff is and also what we did with Make together. So in many places, so that's a bit the moments where we explain EURHope. There's also, you can see the ads that are in transport. There was a lot of work. Especially from the Secretariat. And I really want to take this moment to say that there's still a lot of things to be done for EURHope. We'll have the EURHope weekend from 1st to 2nd of June, where we invite all of our sections to do actions on the ground. So whether you're Jeffrey yet or not, please feel free to join. There will be action all over Europe. And that's a good way to show that we're a united network, and we also have this drive to get other people interested and other people to vote in the European election is the last push, especially towards young people. So a big thank you to our section who did demonstration, gave flyers, did escape games in Europe about the European elections, painted benches. There were so many actions all across Europe, and it's really heartwarming. So thanks a lot to all the Jeff volunteers. Thanks a lot to Make and all the partners, because that was really a great collaboration. We gained a lot, and we learned from each other, I think. And I also want to take a special thanks for the Secretariat of Jeff Europe, who worked very hard on this campaign. And it was not always easy, but it's really worth it. And I'm really thankful for all this work. So shall we go through the EURHope platform?
I think the buzzer is ready.
So for context, we started the EURHope consultation with this buzzer. So we can also put online the new EURHope platform with this. How do we do this?
So the buzzer is connected to the satellite. And immediately it will be displayed in every screen in the world. Okay? So it's an important moment. I'd like maybe, Christelle explained perfectly the purpose of the platforms we are launching today, which is how the different parties are reacting to the consensus. What's very important is usually when you ask to a party reaction, it will say why it's a good thing or why it's a bad thing. But what's very interesting, and I encourage you to spend time on it, is they will explain how. They will give you practical element to trust or distrust their path of execution. And I think that the price of reconnection with young people, and I think more generally with citizens. Are you ready?
I am.
So can you do the countdown, Hendrik and Alexander?
So I'd say from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these very inspiring speeches and also some practical information about the campaign and the agenda of hope. Good news is we have a quiz for you, so I hope that you listen very well. No, we don't have a quiz. I didn't see many scared faces, so I guess you knew that we wouldn't test your knowledge on your hope. So we will proceed with the next part of today, and I would like to invite to the floor Alex, who is going to tell us more about the code of conduct. This is meant to ensure that during the full day, this is a safe space to exchange ideas and points of views.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me well. Just very quickly, hello everyone, I'm Alex. I am the Junior Project and Comms Officer at Jeff Europe, and I'm also one of your contact persons today for the Code of Conduct. I will introduce this very briefly, but I will make sure that everyone understands what this is all about. Basically, the Code of Conduct is a set of principles, values, and rules that applies to all the participants regarding their behavior and the treatment to others during our events, here in the room and also outside of the room. It is a code that is always in action while we are doing an event here together. The main aim is to create a safe and inclusive environment that respects diversity and that just makes sure that everyone feels comfortable and respected. You can check the whole code of conduct in the QR code that you can see on your screens. And when in doubt, you can always refer to the code of conduct contact persons for this event, which are me, and also Ines, who is now not in the room, but you can also refer to Amy over there, who will take her role during this event. And yeah, also remind that there's an anonymous form that you can always reach out to in case you don't feel comfortable going directly to either Amy or me. You can always reach out to that anonymous form in order to make sure that any problem that you might have is heard, and that we can also act in accordance to it. And yeah, that would be basically it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have more good news for you, which is that we are aiming for a coffee break. So after all the input that you got now, we invite you to recharge and to... Okay, so we changed. It's coming soon. But giving the timing change we just experienced, bear with us for a couple more minutes. Sorry, I kind of already gave you the projection ahead. But we take the opportunity to already benefit of a bit time that we want right now to already introduce the working groups that will be worked on later in the afternoon, so after lunch. But we were a bit faster than we expected, so we benefit from this right now. And once we're all learned about the working groups, then it's time for the coffee break. So thanks, Amy, for correcting this workflow.
All right, so the working groups. As you've just heard, the agenda of hope is divided in several topics and themes. We do not want the agenda of hope to be just a list of propositions and that's it. We want to make it go live. We want you to share the agenda of hope, and we want to hear from you as well. New ideas, new reflections. So what we are going to do in these working groups is actually list the different groups that you will be able to join. And we ask you, please, to organize yourselves. And you're invited to join the working group you're the most interested in, or you feel that you want to contribute the most to the discussions. Oh, sorry. Incorrect information. That's the first of the morning. Sorry, you've already been assigned to working groups. Sorry. And you will have exactly on the screen, you will see yourselves divided. The first group is democracy and EU institutions. Second, economy, social justice and employment. Third, health and education. Fourth, research and innovation. Fifth, climate change and environment. And sixth, EU and the world. Seven, human rights and migration. So these working groups will be facilitated and will include partners from the coalition, and you will gain more insights as to how they contributed to the campaign. But remember that your insights and your ideas will be extremely valued.
Okay, so that you already get comfortable with the people you work on this afternoon. We now take the 30 minutes that we have ahead of the bespoken coffee break to get to know the peers from your working group. So we have the facilitators in the room that maybe you can stand up, all the facilitators, and we can already maybe in the room take a spot and kind of. We have 7 groups, so I would say there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you can split up maybe accordingly. And I would invite everyone from the first working group to go in the corner very there. The second one to meet rather there. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The goal is now not to talk about the topics, but really just to get to know each other, to who you are, where you're from, and then we will talk about the topics in the afternoon. This all is now half an hour, and then we will pass to the lunch break. Thank you very much. If you don't remember in which working group you are, you can ask us. So if you are doubting your working group, you can come here and ask us. Thank you. Just to make sure, just to make sure everyone is at the right spot. Shh. Maybe group 1 can raise the hand quickly, so everyone finds group 1. Democracy. Okay. You're there. Group number 2. Very good job. Group number 3. Everyone still looking for group number 3? Okay, looks good. Group number 4. Okay, it's a bit scattered, so maybe you unite. Group number 5. Okay, is unexpected central, but there's group 5. Group number 6. Okay, I invite you to gather. And group number 7. Wonderful. Okay, that looks very good. Congratulations and see you at 11:30 for the coffee break. Thank you very much for being back. We would kindly ask you to sit down, fasten your seatbelt.
And stay seated.
Thank you.
I love the different types of note-taking going on here.
We are now passing to the next item of our program today, because we do not only want to talk about why it is important to vote and what young Europeans think about elections, but also who you can vote for and who is on the lists. And therefore we are very happy to now have a debate with young candidates for the European election. And I will not tell much more, but to introduce the moderator of the debate, which is Maurizio Cutton. He is the UK's elected young ambassador to Europe and the youngest advisor in the European Economic and Social Committee's history. Maurizio will be our moderator for the young candidates debate. Please welcome him on stage. Maurizio, happy to have you here. And before I invite Alexian to let us know who is with us today at this debate.
So welcome Lefteris Vasilopoulos. I hope I don't massacre your name too much, thank you. So you're from France and you're a candidate for MEETxEurHope. We have also Chloé Ridel from France, from the SND party. We have Lucie Rousselle from Belgium, from Renew Europe. We have Benedetta Scuderi from Italy and from the European Greens, who is joining us online. We welcome Benedek Farkas from Hungary, also from Renew Europe. And we have Rhia Lopes from Portugal, representing and running MEETxEurHope.
Maurizio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. It's great to be joined by so many young Europeans that are interested in these elections and are interested in the future of Europe. I will not take long, because I really do want to hear from the candidates themselves. But before I get to that, I would just want to say a couple things for housekeeping. This is a debate, and there will be politics involved, there will be emotions expressed, there will be ideas expressed. And all of these candidates, to be honest, are fantastic for having taken that decision to stand at such a young age for politics. As we all know, young people are vastly underrepresented in the political sector. And, well, in national parliaments, they make a tiny, tiny fraction. In the European Parliament, they make a tiny, tiny fraction. So in terms of housekeeping, let's keep that in mind. Let's keep that in mind that all of these individuals that you will hear from today are talented, are full of ideas and full of hope for the future of Europe. And with that, let's give them a round of applause. So before you hear from them, I just want to say a couple things about where Europe stands at the moment. I will start off by saying that it's a bit weird to have a British guy talking about the future of the European Union. So I'll just say that out from the start. But as was mentioned in my biography, I have served with the European Economic and Social Committee on a recent report on EU-UK youth engagement. Through that participation, I was the youngest advisor in the EESC's history, and that is why I'm here today to moderate this panel. So looking at Europe, there are many challenges facing us, from climate change to social issues to justice to the economy and human rights. And a lot of these topics will be discussed today. What I really want to do in this panel is give you the opportunity not just to hear from the candidates, but to also ask questions at the end. Because I do believe that it is important that you have your answers heard and that you have your questions listened to. Once again, before I get to that, I just want to say that youth disillusionment is a big, big issue in Europe. It's something that we talk about a lot. It's something that Jeff Europe and MEETxEurHope have talked a lot about through their Agenda of Hope project, a project that has been in operation for many, many months, and has seen all sorts of successes from over 1.5 million young people consulted with and heard across Europe, their voices, their ideas properly channeled into the decision-making process. I mean, there were 5,000 proposals lodged by young people directly to decision makers via these two fantastic organizations. That being said, one of the things that came across in that report, in that agenda of hope, is the real issue of youth disillusionment. And this is something that we will be tackling today. How can we approach this issue? How can we address this issue? How can the candidates here today find solutions to combat this? And the reason it's so important is not just because young people deserve to be listened to. They do. But it's also because, as the World Economic Forum recognized in 2021, youth disillusionment poses a vital security threat. In 2021, they recognized it as one of the 10 most immediate challenges of the 21st century in terms of security challenges. So keep that in mind as well. We're in the house of European civil society. Ask your questions. Grill these candidates on what you want Europe to be and what you want them to do for you. And with that, I will start with some introductory remarks from all of the candidates. So I'll start with yourself, please. 2 minutes, and then we will go on throughout the panel.
Yes.
Okay. Hello. Do I see my time anywhere, or should I just... Okay. Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us and giving us this opportunity. I think it's an awesome time to, you know, from everywhere in Europe to have a conversation with each other, not just here, but also out with the coffee, which is probably the best one. My background is in international administration and also in public policy. So my studies are literally about how to improve the common good, right? How to serve the public. My main fields are education policy and sustainable development. And I didn't say my name, which is Benedek Farkas. I'm from Hungary. I come from the Momentum Party, which is a liberal party. We are members of the Renew group in the parliament and of ALDE on the European level. And I do believe that education policy and sustainable development, which are my two main fields, are the most important fields for a young person. So, and just general in the world. I was elected in 2019 as a councillor in my small town, which is next to Budapest. It's Budaörs, a small town of 30,000 people. And finally, about my values. First and foremost, I consider myself liberal, progressive, centrist, and moderate. And you might, as young people, you might be turned off by being centrist and moderate. I don't say this as not having big ambitions to change the world and to make the world better, but rather as a contrast to the populist waves which we are experiencing in recent years. I believe populism is a plague, both left-wing and right-wing, but let's be real, I do believe right-wing populism is a way bigger threat, and it's a way bigger problem in our world currently. Probably I fit into the 2 minutes, so I hand over my time.
Thank you very much. Next up.
Here. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm super happy to be here, too. I'm Lucie Rousselle. I'm a member of the Mouvement Réformateur, which is the Liberal Party in French-speaking Belgium, and part of the Renew Europe family, and part of the ALDE party at European level. So 2 things about myself, maybe. I was born and raised in Brussels, which is kind of exotic in this kind of assembly. And I also work for the EU institutions. I work as an advisor to the European Commissioner for Justice and Consumer Protection. So I think I can say that I leave the European Union, its institutions, challenges, policies on a daily basis. And in my work at the European Commission, I was able to work on very interesting topics with my commissioner, and those topics were really having an impact on the daily life of citizens, such as, for example, a new law to make repair for consumers a reality, the right to repair, the fight against greenwashing, early obsolescence, the law on due diligence to make sure that companies respect human rights and environments in their supply chains. Well, very diverse laws on which we worked recently. And the other thing about me is that I'm politically engaged since university. My first campaign was in 2018, where I was elected as a city councillor in Ixelles, which is actually right next door and home to the European Parliament. Well, actually to the Place du Luxembourg, for those who know it. And in my local mandate, I focused on social affairs. So I got to see the reality of citizens in the past crisis, energy crisis, Ukraine, the massive arrival of refugees in Brussels, and the challenges in their daily lives, the rise of energy prices, the digital divides, the fact that the sustainable option is most often the most expensive one, and so many other things that are that were really feeding my work into the legislative proposals at the European Commission level. So I had those two hats, and it was really complementary in my daily life. So now I decided to take. Well, I spoke too much already. I decided to go one step further, and stand in the European election, because I think that we need more young people to shape the European Union that we want and that we want to leave to our children. So I will stop here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we should go to our online participants and give them the floor next before we continue. Rhia Lopes, are you happy to go? We're just working to try and fix the microphone. Can you try and speak again? Perhaps whilst we wait, we can move on to Chloé, if you're okay.
Okay, now it's working. Hello, everybody. I am very happy to be here, and I thank you also for attending this debate. I'm Chloé Ridel. I am 32 years old. I am the spokesperson for the Socialist Party in France, and I am a candidate at this European election on the list headed by Raphael Glucksmann, whom you may know. So what can I say? What we are trying to do in France is convicting the French people that this European election is historic, that the issues at stake have never been so important for the future of Europe and the future of our democracies, and that we have to talk about Europe, actually. This is not a national election, and we have a lot of political parties in France, notably the far right, who is trying to steal this election and make it only a national, issue. But the issues at stake are so important. We are, under attack, notably from Russia. We see poverty growing all over Europe, social inequalities. We see a threat of dismantling the Green Deal from the far-right populism as well. We see also threats to the rights of women, etc., etc. So I'm very happy to see that young people actually, we have young candidates to this European election, because it's, our responsibility as well to be involved and to be involved in politics to shape the Europe we want. And just to speak about my experience, but maybe my 2 minutes are already gone. But, I'm 32 years old. I was born in 1991. And I belong to this generation who was born with Europe, but has no illusion whatsoever on, the problems of Europe and all these crises, because I became an adult through the economic crisis of 2008, and then we went from disillusion to another disillusion. And now we see a chance of Europe changing. Those past few years, since the pandemic, we've seen Europe building more and more solidarity and progress for the Europeans, and so we want to bring that further now, and this is the deep meaning of my engagement right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we get Rhia on the line? No? Okay, we're going to go to Lefteris. Your next up. Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Lefteris Vasilopoulos. You can just call me Lefteris. I come from Greece, and currently I'm an Erasmus student in Sciences Po Toulouse in France. I'm 22 years old, so pretty much the same age as most of us here. So I represent Volt France, which is like the national section of Volt Europe, pan-European movement, established in 2017, and I'm here to discuss about a question that I also had some months ago. What if an Erasmus student is a candidate for the European elections? I will present you my story in actually 45 seconds, because we have the time limit, but I would like to talk about more afterwards. So, this idea began in January, and I'm like, what will happen? Let's ask. I asked many people, and like at the end I could, and then with Volt France we decided to get this idea on. And so a very important part is that at the same moment I don't have the right to be a candidate for the European elections in Greece. That's because in Greece you have to be 25 to be a candidate. However, I'm 22, so I can't. But in France and in many other European countries, it's different. For example, at 18. So that's my story in some words. And I could say that this idea, like at the moment I was in Volt France list, I was 15th place. And Volt France so is in a coalition at the moment with Europe Territoire Écologie with 4 other parties, and they took only 12 places. So as I was in 15th place, I unfortunately got out of the final list, but this is okay, because in fact the idea shows that this is possible, the road has opened, and I'm really happy to discuss about the substance of what we call like European identity, because this is, after all, and European citizenship, and active Erasmus students that are engaged for Europe. So thank you, Jeff Europe, for being there, for doing this pan-European event, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Do we have Rhia on the line? Okay, technical issues. We're going to go to Benedetta, if she's still on the line. Okay, so we'll go back to them once we've solved that. Let's proceed with some questions. So the first question I'm going to ask is on climate and the environment, because as many of you will know, this is the most existential threat to Europe's security, to the world's security, and also in general to our very livelihoods. And it deserves a place at the very top of the agenda, and I'm sure that the candidates will agree. So the question, and then I will do the speaker order just as last time, is in 2021, the University of Bath released a global survey showing nearly 60% of young people polled across 10 countries said they felt very or extremely worried about climate change. With climate anxiety rising, what would you do to tackle the issue if elected this June? The floor to you.
Just to be sure.
2 minutes. Yeah.
Hopefully later. Okay. Thank you. This is actually an issue very near and dear to my heart. I believe that anxiety doesn't help us at all. I think it makes us freeze, it makes us passive. Thank you. So I believe that we have to turn our anxiety to action, and there is actually a really cool model for this. You basically create a Venn diagram of what you are good at, what is needed for climate action, right? And what are your possibilities? And if you find something in the intersection of those things, then that's what you should do. Some of us, maybe all of us, decided that what we're good at is maybe speaking to people, maybe doing politics itself, and that is how we should fight for climate. You can do activism, you can open a restaurant that is plant-based, etc. There's so many different types of actions you can do, and not all of them have to be in public life, although probably most of you are politically inclined because you're here. So just raising your voice and voting, I think it's incredibly important that you vote on politicians that care about this issue. And many of our countries still have a lot of political parties that do not care about this issue. And let's say, in theory, that you are, I don't know, very left-wing, and your country has a very left-wing party, and they don't care about the environment. I think for the European elections, you should choose a different party. And of course, I could say it about even my political family as well. If in your country the Liberal Party is not green, you shouldn't vote for your Liberal Party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lucie, I'll go to you next.
Thank you, and fully agree with Benedek. The first thing I wanted to say is that we should all be proud to live in the European Union, first of all. With the climate law that was adopted in 2021, the European Union really decided to reach this objective of climate neutrality in 2050, which is in line with the Paris Agreement, obviously, but we went one step further by saying that there shouldn't be any decision made at the European Union level that goes against this objective of climate neutrality. And I think that's really important because it's really in every day, every decision, every law that we keep this principle in mind. And I think that we are probably the first continent to do that. So we should be proud of that. These past years, this was translated into about 75 legislations at EU level on basically everything. From the renovation of buildings to the development of renewables, ensuring sustainable consumption, so many things that were done. But of course, now we need to apply those laws. That's why we shouldn't pause the Green Deal. I fully disagree with that, because now it's the time for implementation and enforcement. That's really key in my view. That's the first step. But we also need massive investments to make the Green Deal a reality. And I was looking at the proposals from the Agenda of Hope, and it was funny because I think this is a really good idea, the global tax on CO2 emissions. Well, as we did for the tax on multinational companies at OECD level, I think it's a very good idea. But it takes time, and it's, as you know, it's extremely difficult to put people around the table and agree on that, already at EU level, so can you imagine at global level? So I think that to find the money to fund the green transition, we already have a few solutions. At EU level, we have a tax on plastic, we have put a price on carbon, we have reformed this emission trading system to cover around, I think, 75% of emissions now. This will be another resource. We have put a carbon border tax, and I think this is one of the very interesting things that we've done at EU level and that we need to extend in the next mandate. This is one of the proposals I fully support, to extend the scope of this carbon border tax, because now it's only covering raw materials like iron or steel, etc. But I think we should definitely cover more products. For example, if you take textiles, or no, let's take the example of a bike. If you produce a bike in Europe and you import the steel from another country, you will pay, the European manufacturer will pay a price on the steel used in the production of the bike. But if you import the final product, the bike, from another country produced with the same steel, well, there's no price paid on carbon there. So I think that this is an unfair competition for EU producers, and that we need to stop that, and we need to expand this carbon border tax to many other products. I think it would also encourage other countries to reduce their emissions, and I think that it would prevent also relocation and make sure that we produce in the European Union, and that's one of the solutions I have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've already heard about the importance of green initiatives supporting green measures, but also the importance of supporting competition and finding ways to engage businesses in the process. I want to turn to Chloé now to hear more about your thoughts on this issue. What should we be doing to tackle climate anxiety? Over to you.
We have to realize the Green Deal, and the first things we have to do is to protect the Green Deal from being dismantled by the future European Parliament, if this European Parliament we have a majority of the right with the far right. We are at risk of seeing this Green Deal dismantled, but we have also to bring the Green Deal further, to make it concretely work. That was said before me. Ecology, we don't have to talk about it only. We also have to fund it. So we have to make investments. And when we talk about ecology, we also have to make it concretely to, it's an industrial revolution, the ecological bifurcation. So first, I want to talk about the funding, and we are talking with the S&D group of a social deal. You know, we have the Green Deal, now we have to build a social deal. Why? Because we want this funding of the ecology to be fair. Because the richest of us all are those who pollute the most, and the poorest are those who suffer the most from the consequences of this pollution. We know that. So when we ask ourselves who will fund this Green Deal, because we are talking here of tens of billions of euros, okay? We have to invest per year until 2030 to reach the carbon neutrality. We ask the question, who pays? And we respond to this question by saying that we have to tax the richest, and it's not just about words. We have concretely launched a European Citizenship Initiative, okay? This is a global petition at the European level that you can all sign. We have created a website with the S&D groups and all our partners through Europe, taxtherich.eu. And we have calculated with, great economists that this tax at the European level could bring us 200 billion of euro per year, which is actually bigger than the actual European Union budget annual. And with this money, we could fund the Green Deal properly, and we could fund also social policies within the Green Deal. We can talk about, for example, train, the investment we have to make in the train to make it affordable and accessible all over Europe for big capitals, but also for small cities. So this is about, the funding aspect of the Green Deal, but the financial, but I think this is crucial. And I think that we have built a Green Deal with a lot of norms, but we don't have money now to fund it. And we have to compare with what the Chinese are doing for their own Green Deal. They are pouring billions and billions and billions of dollars to become the greatest green champion of the world. And this leads me to my second part. I want to talk about industrial issues of the Green Deal. No, because this is important. Why? Because actually...
Sorry, we will need to speed up the process.
Okay, I will speed up, but I just want to say that Europe has been dependent of the Russian gas. Now we are dependent of the Chinese solar panels. Okay? We are importing 90% of solar panels from China. And we want to say that this is an absurdity in a social point of view because it's destroying industrial, employment in Europe. This is absurd in a geopolitical point of view because it makes us dependent of an authoritarian regime, China. But this is also absurd, an absurdity in an ecological point of view because actually the solar panels that we are importing from China are built with carbon, charbon, because 75% of the Chinese electricity comes from the charbon, and we are importing it, and we are calling it Green Deal. You know, this is not acceptable. So we are talking about protectionism, protecting our borders, do what the United States did, putting taxes on our borders, on notably the solar panel, but all the green industry, so that we can have a green industry that is European.
Yes, so we've heard protectionism, we've heard various different strategies. Let's try and stick to time. Next up,
so it's difficult for me to express in English and be
that's okay.
Thank you. I could say, to begin, that maybe more than 60% of young people are anxious about environmental issues, which shows the big problem that we have. And the first question that comes into my mind is why young people should be there to represent for the climate. Why are we the persons to do that? First of all, because for me, youth is like the heart of the movement. It's Fridays for Future. Young people are there. And we are there not only for young people, we are there for everybody. So we don't, if you have young representatives for the climate, in fact, you have young people that represent everyone. So what do we need now? What do we need to address that in Europe? For me, I think it's common European action. We have to act together. That's what we see. For example, more competencies to the EU level in terms of in the environment. This is a problem which is global. This is a problem that not a single country can solve on her own. So we have, first of all, we have already some tools. We have the Green Deal. We have to be more ambitious about that. That's a fact. And I feel that many young people believe the same. We have also, in the Green Deal, okay, you can find so many things and so many tools to use. However, what is really important is about what is the logic. What is the logic that we go to address that environmental issue? And here, I would say that it is very important to combine how we can have, the logic of having an economy that is a circular economy, to an environmental economy, and at the same time address the problem of social poverty. Because we see, for example, sometimes we see that the Green Deal is attacked whenever we say we don't have enough money for the Green Deal. But this is not the case. We should and we must go on for a model that is in the logic of environment and social protection. So for that to end in the next 20 seconds, I could say that this is the EU action, and that's why we should have common European action and competencies even more in the European level and leave it in EU, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I see that we have our two online speakers there. Is the microphone working? No? Okay, we will try them again later. So we're going to switch now to security and defense. The question is, Russia's 2022 re-invasion of Ukraine has brought Europe to the front lines of a battle between democracy and the forces of autocracy and the repression. Given Europe's vulnerabilities in securing its futures, what do you think the next European Parliament should do to safeguard Europe's democratic future and Ukraine's fight for freedom and liberation? Bit of a lengthy question, but I'll go to Chloé first. 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. when we speak about defense, we advocate for a genuine European defense, and we actually have the means to do that, because if we addition all the military spending of all EU members, we spend 300 billions of euros per year for our defense, which is more actually than the military spending of China. So we are capable of dealing with our own security and protecting ourselves. It's just a matter of willingness. And for doing that, we have to build a European defense industry to buy European, not buy American, okay? We have to coordinate better our armed forces, and we have to be aware of the threats surrounding us, the threats of Russia, of course. We know that the war of aggression in Ukraine is not only a war of destruction of Ukraine, it's also a war against all Europe. And what Vladimir Putin is doing against Europe is, is trying to divide us, to weaken us, and he is putting us under cyber attacks. For example, we have suffered from cyber attacks against our hospitals in France. We suffer from fake news on our social media, etc., etc. So this is the threat we are suffering from Vladimir Putin. So we have to be aware of that. And maybe I want to say a few words about what should European Union do as regard international law. We have to show the world that we respect international law, whether it is bridge in Ukraine or in other parts of the world. We have to end double standards, and we have to make the respect of human rights a priority for Europe. And we saw that actually we suffer from the opinion of the global South that European Union, when we speak of international law, when we speak about human rights, we have double standards, and we have to end about that and say that international law is not respected now in Gaza, and it's not respected either in Ukraine, and both at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you for the intervention. I'm going to go in this order. So I'm going to start with Lucie now, then Lefteris, and then Benedek. Over to you. 2 minutes.
Yes. So when it comes to Ukraine, I think it's worth recalling what day we are today. We are the 8th May 2024, but 80 years ago, it was the end of the Second World War. Tomorrow it's the 9th of Europe Day, where the day we created in 1950 the start of the European Union with the EESC. And I think, it's worth recalling that, because the European Union was created to put an end on the war, on future wars, because with solidarity, and when you depend on each other's economy, well, you don't have any interest to make war. And well, now with the war at our borders in Ukraine, we realize that having a war at our borders is super dangerous, not only for security, for the European Union security, but also internally it has consequences for us directly. For example, on our supply of energy, we were totally dependent on Russian gas. This has made an unprecedented crisis in the European Union with the rise in energy prices. So we cannot afford having that war on our borders anymore. And we must continue all the engagements of the past years in that direction. So for the next mandate, I think one of the priorities should definitely to be to invest in a real European defense, as Chloé was saying. I fully agree with that. There is also a question of interoperability, because we have 27 different defense systems, different armies, and sometimes they just don't work together. So I think that's one interesting area in which we need to look at. And we should invest together, definitely. I was listening to the radio this morning, and they were saying that most of the weapons that we send to Ukraine, actually we buy them to the US to then send it to Ukraine. What is it? We cannot depend on others for our security. Definitely the NATO is important, but it's not enough. We should be independent in that regard too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to switch now to... Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot about buy European, about securing our defense forces. Lefteris, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. First of all, I could say that I would like to remind some values that for me are what Europe means. For me it's like united through diversity. It means also solidarity, and Europe means also peace. So first of all, Europe must stand for these values, must stand for peace, and that's why it must stand for Ukraine and for every other part of the world that the human rights are being violated. Either this is in Ukraine, either this is in Gaza. Apart from that, I could say that, yes, foreign policy is a national competence. We have 27 different recipes for that. And it's a difficult part. It's a difficult part, that's a fact. Foreign policy and migration. So that's why we should have these values. But we must, in terms of proposals, I think that in order to have a strategic autonomy of the EU, that we are talking a lot about, we must have a common position. So in order to have a common position, in fact, you have to avoid veto. So I could say that we should go to that road together without a veto. But in order to have an accepted non-veto, you have to stand with these values. So that's why I start from these values, and I'm very strongly supporting that this is the road to go with these values. So that's my answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And then last but not least, what are your thoughts on this? And how...
Thank you. As someone coming from Hungary, mentioning veto is quite a personal issue, and I do feel ashamed of my government abusing the veto power instead of searching for consensus. The first thing is really easy for me to say, because ALDE and Renew Europe have always been for common border protection and for a common European military. Of course, the states can also have their own military, but we should also have our common military. The more complicated part, I think, is democracy, and we must protect it, period. No questions asked. I think that we can and should be even more aggressive towards Putin's propaganda, which, I don't know if you know this, but Putin's narrative about the war is spread on state television in Hungary. Not just in some fringe media, it is on the state television, it is on the official media, it is on the press conferences of government officials. And this leads us, I think, finally to the paradox of tolerance, which is something that is often brought up by especially populist right-wingers. They cynically ask, if you are so tolerant, why aren't you tolerant of my intolerance, of their homophobia, of their racism, and etc.? Well, I think tolerance is a contract. It's not an absolute moral value, it is a contract. And if you don't abide by the contract, which is tolerance, which is practicing tolerance, then you are out of the contract. So, when you repress free speech, when you're intolerant of, for instance, LGBTQ people, when you're intolerant of migrants, for instance, you're out of the contract of tolerance. And yes, we can silence you in some ways. And this is true about, I was very happy that I heard Ukraine mentioned, but we should be intolerant of intolerance in both Gaza and Israel as well. We need two democracies there, not two or 1.5 or whatever theocracies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just checking with the technical team. Is there been any updates? No. So we're going to move on to the next question. We're going to do this one a little bit quicker so that there's time for questions as well from the audience. The next topic is another big topic, which is the economy, specifically housing. So going back to the point that I raised earlier on youth disillusionment, one of the biggest issues facing young people today is finding affordable housing and being able to climb up the housing ladder. In many cases, it is even given a platform for extremist parties to exploit youth concerns. So what are your thoughts on this issue? And how do you think decision makers in Europe can adequately tackle this problem and ensure that youth concerns are addressed? I am going to start with Lucie, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. Well, affordable housing, I think, well, this is not the right answer, but the responsibility lies first with the member states. I need to say that. But what can we do at European level? Well, it all revolves around the same question. First, we need to renovate buildings all over Europe. We need to have heating that is not based on fossil energy, etc. And this goes back to the question of the Green Deal and how we can make that big jump to carbon neutrality while leaving no one behind. That's the key question of the next mandate. That's the crucial question. And already in the past mandate, there were some tools that were developed to face that problem with, for example, the Social Climate Fund or the Just Transition Fund. So basically, you get resources from taxing the most polluting activities, and you get these resources to fund the transition and help the most deprived regions, cities, workers that have lost their job because of the climate transition, etc. But what we did also was the recovery and resilience plans, funds. What we did is to borrow money together. Why? For an exceptional circumstance, which was COVID. And I think that we are in the same situation now with the climate crisis. This is exceptional circumstances, and we need to borrow money together to fund this green transition. And we need solidarity once again in that regard too. I just wanted to say that, well, the Belgian motto is strength lies in unity. And I think that this is really what we need for the future of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next question, the same question will now go to Lefteris, and then I will proceed with Benedek and then Chloé, if that's okay. Trying to switch it up here.
So about housing, I feel that the first thought was that housing problem is also connected to the bigger problem of the economic independence of youth. Everywhere around Europe, young people, we cannot be independently in an economic way. We don't have how can we study and work, how can we study 5 hours, work 5 hours, have the money and at the same moment have fun in our lives, which is important. And so, for housing, I could say that, first of all, we should, I could do a proposal. For example, having help, giving some money to students, like European housing help, we can name it, or whatever. In each country, we have the systems. Or we can, at the same moment, have a system where the rent can be in a limited way. How have we already found for Erasmus, how the money should go in every country? We could find a system like that for Europe to to say that in Athens and in Ljubljana, the student rent will be in that line. This will definitely help. But the discussion is a little bit bigger, and I will return to the economic independence of youth. because this also goes to the working rights. This also goes to, like, for example, the fact that we are working without being paid, sometimes in internships. So it's a big plan, and this needs a big plan for youth to be included in the economy, in fact, and to have economical independence, because this is all about. So this will start from working rights of youth protected all around the EU. This will start also from protection of housing all around the EU. So yes, common action again. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, we have fixed the tech difficulties, so I think we will turn to Benedetta first, as she has to leave soon. And
Hello? Can you hear me properly? Yes, amazing. So what do I do? Shall I answer to all the questions in one go? Okay, great. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very sorry I cannot be there with you, but I had a bit of a fun medical issue to my ear. Anyway, I'm not gonna drag you into that. I'm glad that this is happening. I'm glad that a debate at European level is happening with young candidates. Also, while listening to this conversation, it was just great, because I think if there were more young candidates, more young people in the European Parliament, a lot of things will be solved. We're all coming from different political families, but there was like a common values that were very, very solid. We are pro-Europe, we are pro-justice, we want to solve the climate crisis, and this is already a great basis to start the next Parliament. I hope that is going to be also the composition of the Parliament. So I am the co-spokesperson of the Federation of Young European Greens, which is a youth federation of all green political youth organizations all over Europe. And I'm not going to give a long presentation because I'm for a matter of time. I work in sustainability, and I fight for climate, social justice, and feminist rights. So on the first topic, it was the climate anxiety. I do agree with a lot of things that were said, especially on the industrial transition, taxing the rich to get the investments we need, so fighting any kind of austerity. But in terms properly of climate anxiety, I think we need to tackle two aspects that are to the heart of our people. One is, the first one is adaptation. So we need to start thinking about adaptation much, much more. I come from Italy, and my country has been like devastated by extreme climate event. And this is going to be more and more often. And I think our climate anxiety as a young people also comes from the fact that we don't know if we can get that job, because that job might not exist anymore. Shall I have a family because my kids might not have water? Where I come from the south of Italy, there might be no water anymore, might be completely desertified. So we need to act for adaptation, and the European Union needs to invest on adaptation, and also needs to invest. Sorry, I hear some weird noises, but needs to invest, but also needs to put proper targets for countries for adaptation, because right now there's too much freedom. We talked a lot about mitigation, but we didn't talk about our water resources. We didn't talk about the protection of our land from flooding, and so on and so forth. And then I think there's another topic on climate anxiety that we need to really be working much more than what we do, than what we did, is the planetary action. European Union must have a even stronger role in the global negotiations, because we really need to bring all the countries to a climate justice. And this also means to have this topic into the trade deals, to have these topics where we can actually have not only in the COPs, but where we can actually have a power and an impact on other countries for them to mitigate the climate crisis, because we're not going to get out of this on our own. So Europe has done a lot, but now we need to be strong and strict on two things. No step backs on the Green Deal. Let's try to adapt our territories, and also let's be stronger in the climate negotiations. Then there was the question on defense. I also agree with everything that's been said. I think however, I think we need to have a more holistic kind of point of view on this. So we need to think, what is the Europe we want? Do we still want a Europe of the nations, or we want a Europe of the regions? We want a federal Europe, and we are fighting for a federal Europe. And this has a great impact also on the defense of Europe, because that means that we're going to have a common defense. That means that we're going to have a renovation of the treaties. That means that we're going to change the treaties, because we believe that Europe is going to be an entity that is a federal entity, and is an entity that works for the peace of our continent and on a global level. So the defense must mean this, and the defense must be very must be very strong. I mean, not sorry, it's the wrong word, but we need to be strong in punishing whoever is not respecting international law. So my colleague from the Social Democrats was perfectly saying this. At the moment, European Union must act. We have been acting against Putin. Now we also must act on Israel, on the international crimes that they are committing, and we should do it. We should have the courage to do it as European Union. We need to start thinking as a common entity, because that's the only way we can actually be an entity of peace. And that was the reason why we created this union. We need to keep that in mind. We are working for the peace, and we need to do it all together. And of course, that means changing the veto, that means changing the treaties, that means taking Europe to another level. And then there was the third question, I don't remember. But I go with the one on the housing, although also because my time is running out. So I'm coming from the Green Group. We did so much on housing already. This is actually a topic that I'm bringing on my campaign a lot, and it's a bit weird because it's like, oh, housing is not a competence of the European Union. Well, first, it can be somehow, and second, we can make it. So we believe that the European Parliament should declare the housing emergency. We have done so with many other emergencies. At the moment, our housing emergency is one of the crucial topics of our generation, but not only of our generation, because there's old people that cannot live in their houses anymore. There's families that cannot afford their houses. This is a huge intergenerational emergency, and the European Parliament should declare the emergency straight away. Then we need to put our budget also on housing, to build more public housing, to renovate our housing. We believe that the Greenhouse Directive is essential, but we need to put resources on the top of the Greenhouse Directive in order to make it just, and to be sure that the governments are starting from housing that is public housing, or houses that are of people that are most vulnerable, and they need to live in they have the right to live in a decent home. And like that, we will also try to decrease the rent price, because we will put more public housing in the market. And of course, we need to put regulation, to start from Euro, to have more transparency, and to help member states and local administration to have regulation on short-term rentals, and of course on avoiding any kind of financial speculation on our houses, because for us, houses is for people and not for profit.
Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting as well. Luckily, we got through the tech difficulties, and we were able to hear from you, and some very interesting points that were raised on a variety of questions. I appreciate that was a lot to cover, but I think all of the participants got something to take away from it. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Rhia Lopes, unfortunately, disconnected. I think there were some technical difficulties there, so unless she's able to join again, we will continue with this panel. We're running a little bit late, so I ask that we try and keep our remarks brief. Benedek, please go ahead on the question on housing.
Thank you very much. I will try to be brief, especially because as a liberal, we have less to say about housing. This is a debate, and I do not agree with what Lefteris said, that this should be a European competence. I very much agree with Lucie. This should be a member state competence, and also because I don't think it's a very complicated issue. This is not an unsolvable issue. This issue just needs the political willingness to be solved. And I think there should be, of course, the political will to be solved. As someone who studied public policy, and I still very much practice that and study that, I firmly believe in best practices. I think we can learn from each other. I think there are member states who are pretty good at this. Austria and Germany are quite famous for their social housing systems. And also, this is an issue that we have already solved after the Second World War. So this is not crazy. This is not unprecedented. We can do it. So what I'd like to talk about is rather some of the issues that causes it, which is, I think, NIMBYism, not in my backyard, if you've heard of it, or I even like better the other mosaic word, which is bananaism, build absolutely nothing anywhere. This is very important, and I think it's a good term, because the people who think this way are bananas. This is crazy. We need cities. We need denser cities. We need more people living in cities, and that can solve the housing crisis. Bananaism or NIMBYism is a social scourge. This is basically privilege protecting their own privilege from underprivileged people. We have to fight this. We don't need, these suburban areas where everybody has their gardens and everybody lives in their own house. This is one of the biggest problems of the United States, and we need to avoid it more in Europe. My final words is we need more cities, less cars, and more trains, and that will solve the housing problem as well. Thank you.
Turning now to Chloé. So we've heard a whole range of opinions on this. More cars, more trains, and more cities. Less cars. Sorry, less cars. sorry. What are your thoughts on this? And let's try and do this one in 2 minutes, so then we can proceed to some questions from the audience.
We are talking about housing here, right? First, I want to say that we spend more and more for housing. For example, in France, 30% of the spending per month is now dedicated to housing, which is a lot of, everyone's salary, to spend 30% of your salary in just your housing. And I'm not speaking about energy here, just housing and rent. So we have a problem about the prices of rent. And, you've said it. What can Europe can do? What we can do at the European level to make housing more affordable? Well, first, we can renovate housing and, make some funding available for the renovating of housing. We are advocating with Raphael Glucksmann to, in priority, spend European money to renovate schools all over Europe. Energetically speaking, but also for housing, of course. And what we can do, which would be very useful at the European level, is to fight against the shortage of housing and the explosion in prices and rents with a European law against the abuse of platforms such as Airbnb. Because Airbnb, led us to a situation where, for example, in Lisbon or in Madrid, the middle class and the lower class cannot, afford to be in the center of the city anymore. The city just emptied itself because of some people, abusing from Airbnb and buying one places, then two, then three, and become just rentier. I don't know how to say it in English, but, so we have to fight against that. And we think that the European level is the best level to regulate big multinationals and platforms like Airbnb and stop abuses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so So those were the three questions that we wanted to ask as part of this moderation. But now it's over to you. We have about 10 minutes, which I think is enough if we've got 3 quick fire questions, and I will ask the speakers to really just give quick fire responses, but 3 questions if there's any. If not, then I can ask further questions, but over to you.
Also, can I say, sorry, if there is a follow-up answer, because like if we have also a follow-up, if there are no questions, like could I have a small follow-up?
Sure.
1 minute.
Sure thing.
And to, like, you
Sure thing, yeah.
Okay. Before about the housing, because it's about if it should be a national or a European competence. And I would say, like, really fast that, in fact, we see the same problem in many European countries. We see it in Greece, we see it in France, we see it everywhere. And I will take my personal example. I wouldn't be able to be here if it was not the Erasmus and the university residence. So, in fact, if we take this, that a student can have 2 problems, money and the residence. For me, the Erasmus gave me the opportunity to go to France and to study in Toulouse, and the university residence gave me the opportunity to do that with the money that Erasmus gave me. So, if we take the example of Erasmus, we can say that if we have the Erasmus, which is a European coordination, and it needs to be more, and if at the same time we coordinate the housing in a European level, we could have like a double combo of students that can do Erasmus and at the same time are protected for their housing, which is the biggest problem in Erasmus, and they are protected for the houses in the countries that they are going to. So we see that here EU coordination in the Erasmus, and the same can be for housing, can be socially fair, because everybody, even if you come from Paris or from a small town in Greece, you can go for Erasmus everywhere in Europe, and not only in Europe, after all. And so, socially fair, inclusive, and it opens horizons. That's Erasmus. So that's my follow-up. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, and I have to say that I am very supportive of the Erasmus scheme. In fact, that was what the report that we were writing here in the European Economic and Social Committee, the report on EU-UK youth engagement was about. It was about trying to get Erasmus back for the UK, so I really do sympathize with that message. We have Rhia Lopes online, and well, there's been a lot of questions raised, and I'd love to give her an opportunity to answer some of them. Rhia, you have 5 minutes. Let us know if you can hear us.
No? You can't hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, so you've had some technical issues. I also had some technical issues. So I have not been here for maybe 20 minutes of the conversation. So I was told that I have around 4 minutes. I'll just briefly present myself. My name is Rhia. I am from Portugal. I am running for Volt Portugal, which is the pan-European party that I'm sure many of you in the audience already have heard about. Aside from my volunteering at Volt, I am also, I work for the European Parliament as a parliamentary advisor. I work on the issues of agriculture, animal welfare, consumer rights, environmental policy, human health, etc. And by working at the European Parliament, I got to know by practicing what works in the EU, what doesn't, and how we should change it to make sure that it fits citizens, member states, and that it works for the EU as a whole. Because in the end, I mean, we do need to be together. We need to be a union to make sure that our economy works, to make sure that we are a strong trading bloc. And we know that acting individually will not get us anywhere, especially when we're competing with economies such as China and the US. And it's very worrying that we see a move of European companies to, for example, the US, or moving their production lines to China and other countries. this is very concerning. So we also want to use our power as Europe, our values. We need to transmit them to the rest of the world because we believe in them and we want to attain, improve our coexistence in this world. We want to act on climate change. We want to make sure that migration works. We want to promote peace. We want to stop wars, etc. So the European Parliament is a great school, and it is also what it led me to want to run for elections. It's seeing how, I mean, you have so many good professionals, but like in any company, you have people that are working for the company and care about it. Others are just there, and this is frequent in the European Parliament, and it's very frustrating. So I use this experience to also, to give me power to run for elections and to believe that I can do better and I can be the voice of the concerns that many young people have. So one of the topics that I did not really hear being addressed in the parts of this meeting where I was logged in, and that is one of my main concerns, is the agricultural sector, which directly impacts on our health and on the health of animals. And we have the Common Agricultural Policy, which takes up 1/3 of the budget of the EU, a huge slice of it. And we also know that it has the agricultural sector and the food sector in general, it has a huge footprint on our ecosystems. But we also know that all this money is being put into it, and the output that we're getting is not the best for us and for the planet. So I think the EU needs to come together and to finally have the strength to reform the Common Agricultural Policy, to make sure that the climate money that is being put into the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, is being well spent. And I'll just highlight very briefly a report from the European Court auditors that says that the money that has been put for climate spending into the EU has had little or no impact in the effort to mitigate climate change. And they even say that one of the most obvious measures to fight climate change and to make the agricultural sector more sustainable is to reduce the number of animals we produce in the EU, and this is something that has never up until now been properly discussed by the EU, because it's just completely shut down, and this is something that would need to be done in parallel with policies to shape consumer behaviors and to also shape what we import from third countries. I see inspiring the action Denmark is taking in this field by creating a plant-based action plan for plant-based food consumption in the country, and this would be my dream for the EU, a plan with goals for our nutritional needs, to set our eating habits in a sustainable path. Anyway, yeah, this is what a very brief overview of my view for the food system. Of course, fisheries and also the way we produce vegetables also needs to be reshaped. But yeah, I think my time is up. So I left a small print of one of my favorite topics. I would love to talk about federalism and all the other topics that were addressed, but I will end it here.
Thank you, Rhia, for joining. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we experienced. I did click it, but okay. So we are tight on time, but if there is any burning question, I see a hand up there. Yes, then we can take that and then before the closing.
Should I go first?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Thank you for your time. You already talked about Ukraine, but I have a quick question related to Ukraine. We see that the youth is very passionate and interested about the conflict between Palestine and Israel, which is totally legitimate, and I think it is important to talk about it. But when it comes to Ukraine, unfortunately, and I'm a war reporter, and I do give conferences on these different matters, so I see how people react to the topic. I see that the youth is not that much interested in the topic. Usually when I give conferences, it's people that are 50 plus that talk about it, that participate, and the youth is not that much interested in the topic or just doesn't care. They say that they feel like they are neutral towards it. So my question to you is, how do you think we can make the youth more interested in this specific topic, which I think is extremely important for the future of Europe? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We'll take 2 more questions, if that's okay, and then the speakers can have a couple minutes to answer them.
Can you hear me now? Hi, thank you so much for all your contributions. Really good. On the note of Ukraine and other kind of member states joining, as you mentioned, some of you said that we may need treaty changes. And as we know, the Common Agricultural Policy accounts to nearly more than a third of the budget. What would you say we need to do to change that? Because Ukraine and other candidate states really rely on subsidies to farmers. And a lot of farmers in Europe we've seen they've been protesting and they're not happy. What would you say we need to do to, not make them worried about the future? Because enlargement would mean that divestment from the Common Agricultural Policy, which we may not actually have enough money to give out to all the new farmers that'll be joining into our EU family. So what would you have for that? Thank you.
And the final question, yes?
Okay, so my question is connected to the ban of unpaid internship. In Hungary, the law says that after 6 months of continuous internship program, is a company obliged to pay for the work. So the youth has to work more than a month at the same company in order to get payment. How is it equal pay and equal work? The European Union said they banned unpaid internship, but in reality, it doesn't really work. I mean, I know it's in still progress, but what do you think? How can they ban totally unpaid internship without any time restrictions?
Thank you. I am clicking it. Okay, we'll start with Rhia because you've joined us after all the technical difficulties, and I think it's important that you have an opportunity to answer some live questions. So I'll quickly summarize them again. The first question was on Ukraine, related to this perception that young people potentially in Europe do not feel as connected to the issue of Ukraine as potentially older people. What are your thoughts on this? The second question was on treaty change, relating it to farmers and their fears on enlargement-related matters and the potential for the agriculture market. And last but not least, a question on banning unpaid internships and the feasibility of it. Go.
Okay, I think the first question was more about Gaza and how to make European people care about it. This is a very hard one because things that are further away from us, it's harder to care about them. And this also applies to other social issues and also issues related to animal welfare. If you don't see it happening and you don't feel the immediate threat, it's very difficult to feel engaged, to take part of it. I would not know how to answer the message. Also, because it was about Ukraine. Okay, Amy confirms that it was about Ukraine. So I have a different perception from Ukraine. I feel like, at least in Portugal, people and young people, they are very concerned about Ukraine. And this would match what I was saying before, relating to the distance. Ukraine feels closer to us than the issue in Gaza. About the common agricultural policies, I really understand all the protests of the farmers, because since 1962, the funding of the Common Agricultural Policy, they've been getting money and they've been told that they can continue producing following the model that is allowed, and that all is okay, continue producing, we'll give you the money. And now all of a sudden we have all these environmental regulations, and of course there is a negative reaction from them. But also we do need to take into account that the Common Agricultural Policy is mostly funding the big business people. The small and medium farmers are being left out. Actually, every day in Europe we lose up around 1,000 farms, according to data from the Commission, and this is because the Common Agricultural Policy is just completely twisted the way the subsidies are given. And then the other one about banning unpaid internships. Can it actually become a reality? I think it can. I do not see why it could not become a reality if member states align their national policies with what the EU comes to legislate in this regard. I think this needs to happen. Maybe it is a possibility to have a more hybrid system, because, for example, with universities, certain universities in certain countries, they do require internships, and this is during your study period. Maybe here it could be a possibility to make it unpaid for some reason, and maybe this is the example you're thinking about, to have that question in mind. But I think it is doable, and it should be a reality.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Chloé next, followed by Lucie, followed by Benedek, and then Lefteris. I can repeat the questions if helpful.
No, it is. Thank you. Thank you all for those very interesting questions. Maybe I will answer the first about the interest, the lack of interest of young people for what is happening in Ukraine. I understand, and I think I feel the same thing as you. I can feel that, not only on social media, but also on reality. It is difficult to explain. But maybe we can raise interest about the war, what is happening in Ukraine, but also in Moldavia, but also in Georgia, by explaining what is at stake with Russia, by explaining that Russia is an imperialist state which is leading a colonial war in Ukraine. We are speaking of colonialism and imperialism a lot in Gaza, and we are right to do so, but we also have to use those words to qualify what is happening in Ukraine. And there has been a lot of disinformation about that, saying that, okay, the war between Ukraine and Russia is a problem of frontier. It is not, actually, because the international law recognizes the Ukrainian frontier since 1991. So it's not a problem of frontier. It's a problem of a colonial and imperialist war trying to destroy Ukraine, because Ukraine wanted to be free and to join Europe. So we have to tell this story, and maybe we can raise interest like that, but and also to show films that there are a very nice film in French, which is called 20 Days in Mariupol. Not in French. It has gained an award in the US at the Oscar ceremony. Watch this film. You may cry, but watch this film, 20 Days in Mariupol, the siege of Mariupol. Answering your question about farmers and enlargement, I think that actually refusing to even discuss the enlargement, a lot of political parties are advocating for that, is a big mistake, because we can take this opportunity of the enlargement to transform the European Union and to create a fair competition between farmers all across Europe. Actually, this enlargement for me is a chance to negotiate, and to negotiate that, okay, we will welcome Ukraine in the European family. I'm in favor of that, of course, but we will do it by enlarging the EU budget with new taxes and new own resources. We will do it by reforming the European agricultural policy. So with this negotiation for enlargement, we have an opportunity to put a lot of demands on the table, because at the end of the day, this is the enlargement is decided at unanimity of the member states. So, we have the opportunity to push for, demands on the table and demands for progress, and to protect, the farmers from unfair competition. I think this is what I wanted to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll pass on to Lucie.
So on Ukraine, I think it all depends on who you are talking to, no? Because in some member states, they feel the threats much more directly than for example, Belgium here. But anyway, I think that, I also have a different perception of that, because even in the polls here in Belgium, the war in Ukraine is one of the most important topic in the EU election debate here in Belgium. Security, war in Ukraine. So, youth, okay. Yeah, overall, yes. But still, if it's a majority of citizens who say that, it also includes youth, but okay. I think it depends on who you are talking to. What did I want to say? On treaty change, common agricultural policy, enlargement. I don't want to repeat everything that Chloé said, because I fully agree with everything that she said. It's a debate, but sometimes we can also agree that we agree, and it's a good thing for the next mandate. Reform of the common agricultural policy would be needed, definitely. More own resources, definitely. And support for the small farmers that will need it. But to go back to the question of Ukraine, enlargement is key to keep those countries with us in the fight for democracy, values, freedoms, etc. We cannot leave them like this. We cannot stop the debate about enlargement. This is about Ukraine, but this is also about other countries like Moldova, but also Georgia. Have you seen what's happening there now? We cannot leave them now. We need to tell them that the door remains open. Of course, it will be a long process. Of course, there will be conditions. Of course, we will need some reforms, especially of the common agricultural policy, but we cannot close the door. I think that's super important. And my group will continue to defend that. And then on the last point, on the ban on unpaid internships, well, interesting. This was really pushed by my political group at the European Parliament with a report to call for the ban on unpaid internships. This is something that we continuously defend. There is now a proposal of the European Commission and a proposal of a directive, and this will be left for the next mandate to be discussed with the European Parliament. I know that there is a strong call overall in the European Parliament to properly ban the unpaid internships, and this is, of course, something I will defend myself as well, and my party and my political group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Benedek?
Thank you. Yes, to be respectful of each other's time, I will also just answer one question, and also because I'm also very thankful to Chloé for giving such great answers to the letter to ones. But I'll be here all day. I'll be here even tomorrow, so I'm very happy to discuss any and all of the questions. I'll also talk about the war. I very much agree that I think the youth is uninterested. I myself was incredibly uninterested in war, and I think maybe that's a good thing. Now it's great if the youth is uninterested in war. Perhaps they should be more interested in peace, but not to twist your words. I know what you actually meant. But also, again, why it might not be that important is that I'm not sure we need like participatory and democratic youth involvement or whatever when it comes to handling the war in Ukraine. So I think it does need the political support of the youth, but I'm not sure that this kind of youth involvement and stuff like that is very important when it comes to war. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on war at all. What we should really talk about, and this was also touched on by, I think, also Chloé, because she's amazing at giving answers, apparently, is that what is at stake. We should talk more about what is in danger, what war takes away. We should underline the fact that democracy is peace, and peace is democracy. They don't exist together. So what we should try to help other young people to understand what is it like to live in war? What is it like to live in an occupied state? And that these states are in Europe. So this might sound perverse, but maybe something like an Erasmus or something, that we should listen to more to those young people who live in these conditions. We should bring them here to Belgium, to Spain, to Hungary, where there is peace, so that they can talk to us about their experiences from Georgia, from Moldova, from Ukraine, from Cyprus even, from Armenia, from Chechnya as well. Well, I don't think they would let them leave Chechnya, but you get my point. This is an issue very much in Europe as well, and I will now yield my time. Thank you.
Lefteris, would you like to take the floor? And we're also joined by Benedetta again, so we will also hear from her on some of these questions, but over to you.
Thank you. So, briefly about the first question about Ukraine, I agree what has been said before, because it's about for protecting the values of Europe and protecting peace and human rights. So I feel that the discussion for peace must be continued. And so for the second question about the common agricultural policy and the enlargement, also European coordination for local production is really important, as we see that in order to be environmental and social just in the economy, we must have coordination in every part of Europe. And for the third part, for the unpaid internships, here, first of all, work must be paid. This is evident. Yes. So, as I said before, it's like a big complex of things that lead to insecurity of young people, economical insecurity of young people. Unpaid internships are one of these things. In my opinion, as we see, we should have a coordinated action. When I say coordinated, I mean, for example, an internship revenue that can be a standard for every European young citizen, because this is fair. This is fair, and we should have the same rights, working rights protected. And it also goes with Erasmus, it goes with housing, and it goes with work. These three go together. So that's why this should be in the European level. Thank you.
And last but not least, Benedetta, who is joining us on the train.
Sorry, I never left you, but I had to get the train, so I'm a green. I had to bike to the train station and then come here. Can you hear me properly? Otherwise, I'm not going to do the intervention. Okay, great. Thank you. So sorry for this weird setting, but as time ran out, I had to come here. So the first question, I think it's true. Youth is much less interested in the war in Ukraine rather than what is happening in Gaza. I think it's a matter of justice in a way, because I think the totality of member states in Europe took the right stand, and we all stand with Ukraine, independently of the color of the government. There's governments that are asking want to send more weapon, less weapon, more money, less money, but we all stand with Ukraine, which is the right thing to do. Now we need to understand as European Union how to support Ukraine and how to stop the Putin invasion. This is something that we need to understand together, but we all stand on the right place. Rather than what is happening in Gaza, that's not a clear stand. And that's why I think young people are angry, because they are fighting for justice, because the governments didn't take that stand against Israel, and they're not, and this is something that is really firing young people at the moment. So I think that's might be the reason, but this doesn't mean that we don't have to think about Ukraine and really trying to help our brothers and sisters and siblings in Ukraine at the moment and stop Putin. So the second, on common agriculture policy, I believe we need to completely rethink about it. So the enlargement will not cause a problem with subsidies. The problem with subsidies is that we need to give subsidies for our agriculture, for our farmers to survive because of the big distribution, because big distribution is not paying the right price. And also we're giving this money mostly to the big agribusiness, while we need to give it to small and medium farmers. We need to give it for the transition. If we change this, the money will be enough. Will not be any problem of enlargement. The money is enough, will be enough if it's in the right place, and if farmers are properly paid for their labor, are properly paid for their products. So this is something that we need to keep really much in mind, and this is something on the European Parliament must work on in the next mandate. And then finally on paying internship. So I'm sorry to be the party pooper. The European Commission proposal is not banning unpaid internship at all. This is something we need to fight. We need to have a ban on unpaid internship, a comprehensive ban on unpaid internship, and this should be binding in all member states. So European Union should start being more ambitious labor and social policies and stop giving so much freedom to member states like they did with the minimum wage. We need to ban unpaid internship in all member states, and then whoever is the situation in our member state, the ban will be strong.
Thank you very much, and I know that a lot of people are probably very, very hungry now and want to move on to a lunch break. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for hearing the thoughts of these candidates and for also asking questions. What I can say is that in the lunch there will be an opportunity to further discuss with the candidates. So if you have any burning questions that were not answered, please guys, can we try and just 2 more minutes? There will be an opportunity to further discuss with the candidates and ask them further questions on their policy platforms, on their ideas for Europe. But thank you for joining us, and off to the lunch break.
Yes.